I'm here with Douglas Stevenson from the farm in Summertown, Tennessee. Hi, Doug.
Hi, y'all.
I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the farm and its history.
Well, the farm was established in 1971, but the history goes back a little further. Basically, from San Francisco, the Haight-Ashbury people were getting together and trying to figure out the meaning of life and what to do about the Vietnam War and the questions of making a difference in the world and how to live a life of integrity and to develop more peace in our ever-changing planet. And so went on a speaking tour around the country to talk about that, and got back to California and said, we can't just talk about this. We have to get some land and put it into practice. And started looking back around the trip and thinking, where were people the friendliest? And so Tennessee was one of the places that came up. Land was inexpensive, and so came back to Nashville in 60 school buses, about 300 people, and started looking for land, and eventually settled on 1,700 acres about 70 miles south of Nashville. And we were just young kids in our early 20s. I was actually 19. I came 2 years later in 1973 with my wife, and we had our son about a year later. And people were just trying to figure it out, how to grow food, how to live in the woods, how to take care of each other, what to do when people get sick, what does it mean to deliver our own babies, what are the responsibilities, what are the skills you got to have, and all the things that it took to create a small town, which, one of the biggest one is how do we all get along?
Mm-hmm.
And so the key to that was talking to each other and listening to each other and not being afraid to speak the truth when you saw it, but also not being attached to your own opinion, and being able to accept that it takes two to tango, and we all have an end in this, and sometimes the things that bug you about somebody are the things you do. So we had to learn the hard way how to make it, and the population grew from 300 to 500 to 1,000 to somewhere between 12 and 1,500 people. We started branching out and having farms all around the country: New York, Homestead, Florida, California, Colorado. I went and lived on a farm in Kentucky for a couple of years, and then I went to Guatemala for 2 years with our international relief and development volunteer agency called Plenty, that we started to see if there was something we could actually do to give back. And we went down after a big earthquake down there. We ended up building water systems that would bring clean drinking water to people. The largest one of those served 3 villages with 10,000 people. We started a soy nutrition center that's been going for over 30 years now. And you can now get tofu and soybean ice cream all over Guatemala.
I saw your kids eating the ice cream in one of the pictures. That's adorable.
And, and so that was kind of a peak life experience in particular for me and my wife and our family, just, getting to know the Mayan people and understanding that it's not about riches that make you happy. It's the relationships that you have with each other. And just being able to spend time with such a pure indigenous culture. When we got back in 1980, the farm was going through a financial crisis. That was when the first oil crisis happened in the U.S. and gas went from 50 cents to $1.50 a gallon in about a year. And when you think of gas today being $2 a gallon, this was $1.50 a gallon, 30 some years ago. That was a lot of money then. And, our construction business basically was tanking because nobody was building, and that's how we supported the community. And we finally got all our checkbooks together in one room and realized we were over $500,000 in debt. And that if we didn't do something, we were going to lose the whole thing. And we had an event called the Changeover in September of 1983, where we changed from a communal economy where everyone poured all the money into one pot to a collective economy where we still hold all the land and all the infrastructure in common with each other, but everyone's responsible for earning an income and paying their own bills and contributing to the cost of running the community. And we look at our annual budget and we figure out what are the important things that we need to do this year and figure out how much it's going to cost. We paid off that debt in about 3 years and started getting back on our feet and realizing we still had something to offer, got, back into outreach. And now we have people that come here from all over the world to study midwifery, to learn about permaculture, natural building, community living. And, my kids have grown up. Now I have grandkids. My daughter and her husband live down the road a piece, and my son lives a few hours away. But, we're all still very connected. And we have this giant network of former members all over the country and the world that now we've got Facebook and, discussion groups, and we can stay connected with each other and do projects together. I was just, my Facebook just popped up a picture of when we went to Farm Aid 8 years ago to establish a new project called Farms Not Arms, to give farmers a voice in the peace and justice movement. And we had a big press conference, and we went to Farm Aid and met all kinds of farmers. And, that kind of stuff is just ongoing. It's such a diverse lifestyle. One of the things I find that is one of the real benefits is that you have leverage to live your ideals. If I was just out there by myself, I could do a little bit, but I can do so much more by the power of this collectivity. I've been on the board of directors of a nonprofit land trust that has purchased another 1,400 acres around the community. We raised $1.5 million to make that happen. I couldn't have done that by myself, but each person did their little part, and together we made, big things happen.
It's amazing what you can do in community.
We have a program called Kids to the Country, where we bring children from homeless shelters and refugee centers. They come here for week-long stays here on the farm and get to go swimming and horseback riding and bike riding and get a little relief from the stress of the urban environment.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is one of the farm midwives. This week she's teaching workshops to midwives that come from all over to learn those skills. And at the same time, she's also still delivering babies for people that come here. And, it just goes on and on. So I'll pass it back to you, see what else you might want to ask me about.
Okay. Can you talk about the guiding principles of the farm and maybe how they might have changed from the things you've learned over the years?
Well, I think probably the guiding principle is that was founded as a spiritual community, not an ecological community. And so that by having that first cause of spirituality, that put us it's all defined about, again, those relationships and how we relate to each other and being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And so as I look at it, it's kind of like what we call an energy church. We recognize that life force, some people call it Holy Spirit, some people call it God. It's all energy and vibrations, and how we treat each other is what raises or lowers those vibrations. And when we see justice in the world, we feel those vibrations uplifted. And when we see fear, that's what constricts those vibrations and makes the energy go down. And so it's all about how you treat each other. And so that's still what kind of holds us together today. We still have plenty of personal dramas within the community, and it's a very intense way of living because you're like a small town magnified. You're up in each other's business all the time about everything. And it's not for everybody, but it provides a richness that you can't get just living in suburbia somewhere. So, or isolated on a mountaintop in the country. We feel like we have the best of both worlds. We're very immersed in nature. We're living right in the forest. We have large fields where we can grow gardens and grow our own food. But you can also develop your career, have lots of friends, very vibrant social atmosphere. There's always things going on every day and every weekend. There's parties, potlucks, music performances, theater groups. It just goes, like I said, it just goes on and on.
Sounds ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you resolve conflicts when they come up, and how does the communication work? Are there regular times when you get together?
Well, it's resolving conflicts starts usually one-on-one. You have to talk to each other. And actually, it's even more about listening to each other, because a lot of times what the conflict comes from is somebody not feeling heard. And if you're a good listener, they can relax and listen to you. And that takes care of about 80 to 90% of those conflicts. If that doesn't work, you each bring a friend. And hopefully the friend you bring is friends with that other person. So if you won't listen to the friend you have the conflict with, maybe you'll listen to the other person, and they can maybe help say things for you that you're too frustrated to get out without being uptight. And so, that's like the next level. If that's not resolving things, maybe you need a professional mediator, and we have people that are trained in mediation here. But that only works if both people want to resolve it and want to have that mediation.
Right.
And there's usually going to have to be some give and take. There are times when things come up to bigger meetings. We meet quarterly, usually just to get reports from committees or talk about some broader community issues. Sometimes things are settled by a vote. We tend to use consensus in smaller groups and use the community vote for larger discussions and things that we need, but again, most of those are about, should we pave this road and how much is that going to cost and how will we structure the payback, or should we buy this piece of equipment? But occasionally it's about, how are we going to handle the transfer of houses from one person to another? Is that something we need to get into our bylaws? For about 30 years, we had a very loose trust for the land where we had several trustees that just had the land in their name. It wasn't a foolproof structure, so we worked for 10 years to create a strong document, and then everyone voted to approve that. And so that's what we have today. All of the land, all of the houses, all of the infrastructure are all built into that trust, and it can never be mortgaged. And so the advantage and disadvantages of that is no one owns their home, so you can't lose it to a bank, but then a bank won't provide financing because they can't repossess the home and sell it on the open market. So for people to build a new home, they have to start small, build what they can afford and add on, or maybe they lived outside for a while and they cashed out and they have a nest egg to come and build with. But as the cost of building homes gets more expensive, it's harder and harder for people to do that. So that kind of sets a governor a little bit on our ability to increase our population. There's currently about 200 people here. About 115 of those are full voting members. Then we have people that are going through the provisional member process, people that are just here trying it out, what we would call residents. And then we usually have 20 to 40 guests at any one time.
So the amount of people there has fluctuated over the years quite a bit?
Well, after the changeover, it settled. It went from 1,500 to 100 adults and 150 kids. And so that was like a very traumatic time.
Yeah.
But we had a core group of people that were committed to staying and seeing it through. And, thank God we did.
Yeah.
And so now a lot of the people that joined the community are people who left in the 80s, and maybe they're thinking about retiring, or they just look back here and they go, I think I was having more fun when I was back there.
Yeah.
And it looks like, more what I actually had in mind to begin with, getting back to the land, close to nature, having lots of friends around, and experiencing that, again, that vibrant social atmosphere that, maybe you live in a city and there's lots of stuff going on, but your life is so hectic, you don't get to do any of it.
What are some of the challenges you're facing now as a community?
Well, the biggest challenge is I'm one of the young ones, and I'm 63, as far as the founding generation. When we're still the dominant population, there's about 85 people in my age group, in the 60s and 70s. We're just starting to cross over into that 70. And so we have maybe 40 to 50 people that are under 50. And so they're finally getting to the point where they're taking on some of the responsibilities of running the community. The current manager is one of my proteges, a young man that I'm I'm a
Trainer.
uncle-in-law. His brother is married to my daughter, but I've watched him grow up. I taught him how to run sound for our festivals and music, and now he does all the sound. Now he's the manager of the community, and he's doing a great job, and I'm just so proud of him. And so there's young people on our board of directors, young people in our membership committee. They've got a big vineyard project they're doing. They've started a food forest project where we've planted about 5 acres in fruit and nut trees, and that's being driven by people from that next generation. And so now we're watching the young grandchildren come into play, and keeping our school vibrant and going. So the challenge is, can they bring enough more new people in to keep the population big enough so that the tax base of people who are paying in to run the community doesn't fall on a smaller and smaller group of people, so that it's costing them personally more and more money to run the community. And so that's some of the main challenges ahead, is that transition as we pass on, can they still get along with each other and keep it going?
And how do you think that might happen, that they would grow the community?
I'm one of the people that says you have to be proactive. We tend to just let people find us and decide it's right for them. But, I personally host retreat weekends a few times a year for people that are interested in the community, and particularly if they're interested in living in the community. This is an opportunity to come in, get an overview, tour the place, meet people, and decide if you want to pursue to the next level, take it to the next step. And I usually have 3 to 5 people going through the membership process at any one time that have come to one of my weekends. And so that's something that I'm trying to be an example of. This is how you do that.
And hopefully that's something that will also be carried on after you're not doing it anymore, the retreats and what you offer to the community.
We have a thing called the Eco Village Training Center, and they host workshops on natural building, permaculture design, solar electricity, and most of the crew out there tend to be younger people. And it's also an avenue that attracts people who then end up going through the membership process. And so, it's happening in that way, more in their own flavor. Now, the person who founded the Eco Village Training Center is, one of the people from my generation, Albert Bates, and he's an author and a speaker, and he's constantly traveling around the world, telling people about the community and about those types of, natural lifestyle techniques that attracts people there that then come to those courses. So it is happening.
How much are you in touch with other eco villages in the country, or through the national organization?
As a matter of fact, on Memorial Day weekend in May, I host a conference every year on community. And this year, the national organization called the Fellowship of Intentional Communities, IC.org, is having their annual meeting here the week before my conference, and I've given all of them free passes to the conference. Sorry about that. I'll send that message. So a week before my conference, the members of the Fellowship of Intentional Communities are having their governmental meetings here, and then they'll be staying for my conference, a good number of them. And so we're actually going to be having a celebration on Saturday evening of the weekend, the 30th anniversary of the Fellowship of Intentional Communities. So, they've, over the decades, I've gone to some of their events and made friends, and I produced a video that highlights 20 different communities around the country working with the Fellowship of Intentional Communities in that documentary. And so, it could be more, but, we have a lot of friends out there.
Great. Do you have any particular long-term goals that you'd like to see, things you'd like to see happen in the community?
I think I'm mostly just interested in seeing it continue. I may take a break for a while and go do some traveling, and I'd like to go live in Guatemala again.
Hmm.
But I have faith that it will still be here when I'm ready to return. I think I'm just looking to take my place in the dirt at the end of the road when it all comes to that.
I got it. What advice would you have for other eco-villages?
Well, I would first start with telling people, you don't necessarily have to start a new one. There's hundreds already out there. And if you look around, you can probably find one that matches your personal flavor, what you're looking for. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Every one of them needs new people and needs an extra push that you can bring. I think the thing that I would say to other eco-villages is it's not about the land, it's about the people. And it's those personal connections that, just like a battery in your car, you got to polish those connections. If they corrode, that's what falls apart. I would say the larger communities have an advantage, an edge. When you have the political or personal dramas that are inevitable, and you're in a 10 to 15, 20 person community, they're much more likely to blow up in your face and cause the whole thing to fracture. One of the reasons we've been able to survive is because there's been, over 100 of us, even at the low point. And so when we have those, we can give each other space. We don't necessarily have to interact on a daily basis with somebody that we've had a falling out with. We can give it some time to heal, and develop new circles of friends if we need to. And then allow that, time wounds, all heals.
Exactly. What does the term ecological civilization mean to you, and how do you relate what you're doing at the farm to that larger concept?
Well, there was a book that came out a few years ago called Collapse, and it looked at civilizations and why they failed. And inevitably, it's due to people ignoring their environment, not paying attention to what they're doing to their environment around them until they make it so they can't exist anymore. And, we're in danger of doing that to the entire planet. Now, I have traveled enough to see there's pockets of beauty everywhere, and, everything is not doomed. But, we do have to take responsibility for what we're doing to the planet and, be active, be proactive, be involved, take the time to live a lighter lifestyle, lower your footprint. And that could be, driving a hybrid for a start, or walking to work or riding a bike, or, knowing where your food comes from, whether you grow it yourself or support a local community supported agriculture, take care of a farmer. You have to think about, the next generation. What do you want to do for your children and for your grandchildren? Sometimes we get so caught up in our careers that we lose touch and don't take the time to be with our kids. And if you're not raising sane children, how do we expect to have a sane world for them?
Right.
And, I found that, physical contact, love, letting them know they're loved is easy and so important, and something that's within your power to do.
I so agree with you. So Doug, I know that you're a musician. Would you maybe want to do a little serenade for the end of the interview?
Well, this is I'm from the Beatle generation, and this is, they weren't just musicians, they were spiritual teachers. And this is one of the most profound lyrics that I think they came up with. When you see beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. And the time will come when you see we're all one and life flows on within you and without you.
All right. Thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.